Hello and welcome to this special Friday evening here in Italy broadcast of the Wisdom Factory, where we are so pleased to be able to present once again, by popular demand, Said Dawlabani, who's going to spend some time answering questions that arose just over 2 weeks ago when he was here before. And we'll continue talking about economic peace through resilient design.
And we will ask him what resilient design
We
is.
certainly will, yes. Yeah. And so all of the people out there watching, please take a moment to ask any questions you might.
Oops. What is that? Excuse me, there is something. There is something which was not predicted.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got a lag and a repeat. Okay.
Okay. Now we continue, and I might say.
You might say something.
Something.
Yes.
Yeah, we are the Wisdom Factory, and we have just completed the second season of our podcast, and it was called Wisdom Technologies. And we would like you this time to go over to the link we posted to Crowdcast and post your questions. And this is a new platform, and today we try it out. When you post your question there is a possibility for us to just bring your question up, and then in the replay, people can find just the answer to the question without having to listen to the whole thing. So please, would you do that?
Okay.
Should we say something about the Wisdom Factory, about us?
Not very much.
Just that I'm Heidi Hörnlein, and this is...
Oh, yeah, I'm Mark Davenport.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we are connected by integral theory, as we are here all in the green room. We have invited also Lawrence Gold, who many of you probably know. He has been on Wisdom Factory too, and he will offer a free training soon of his procedures, tetraseed procedures, the gold key release. And then we have Scott Marshall here, and he has, he has created this wonderful picture, which you can see on the Google event page, the spiritual image of Said. That's wonderful too. Thank you, Scott. Yeah. And we have invited them to ask some questions also, in case you outside there in the audience don't ask enough questions.
What? I don't know if that's the way we should talk to our audience.
Okay, let's begin. Do you want to present a little bit, Said? We have here his.
Or would you like us to start with questions? That's up to you.
Either way, this is a very comfortable setting, so we can, an informal setting, I should say, which actually makes for best natural evolution of dialogue.
Okay.
I think it'll be good to pick up on where we left off last time. I think we last discussed what was happening in Greece, and since there have been a few developments that have really, in my opinion, made things worse. The EU has just kicked the proverbial can down the road to an inevitable, unhappy ending for everyone. The Greek financial crisis needed to be addressed at a structural level, at a deep structural level, that really questions the entire premise under which the common currency was created. Yet what happened is they basically got another loan so they can pay the interest on the loan they owe and keep their banks open, which just perpetuates that myth that money is the solution for everything. It is not. And so from that I'd like to lead into what resilient design means in at least the spiral dynamics integral perspective, and so on. But if there are any unresolved questions about the Greek issue, we can take them now or later, or however the flow goes. So I'll leave the floor up to you, Mark.
That's where I was going to begin, actually asking just what you mean by resilient design. Tell us about that. What is resilient design?
Yeah. Well, just before we went on the air, Lawrence and I were discussing, his framework and how it compares to spiral dynamics, and especially second tier in spiral dynamics. Resilient design is a tool of the second tier values, meaning that it has to come from the integrative level or the holistic level of the 7th and the 8th level, which are the second tier in spiral dynamics. We say that because many first tier values are resistant to integration. So banking comes from a very, very old orange with modern tools. It only sees economic integration, they call it whatever they want. As long as you only see it from a strategic banking perspective, it will never be a whole system development towards economics. So what we use is resilient design. Certain people call it integrative design. I think you need to add the resilience aspect of the model. And basically, in a nutshell, it is designing economic plans commensurate with the level of development of the culture that you are designing for. So there are solutions for cultures that are in the second and third levels of development, so which really is where Greece is. The center of gravity of Greece is, especially emerging out of a dictatorship right into the EU, into a democratic form of governance. It really hadn't had enough time before it was integrated to develop the institutions needed to accommodate the blue institutions, needed to accommodate a robust orange economy. They came out of a dictatorship into purple-red values, and the EU embraced it with membership. Then the issue with providing them with a common currency, without building the infrastructure that brought their institutions up to have a center of gravity in European blue, whatever that might look like. In the sense, they really had no clue to the entire relationship of debt to development, of the value of money, and that whole meme of how borrowing can build a modern-day economy. So a resilient design for Greece would have been to, first of all, find out where their center of gravity is. The corruption was evident. The fact that the economy was 80% based on services, and almost half of that was tourism, and the other half was working for government, should have been a clear sign that the economy is not diversified. And there had to be a goal of making sure the diversity gets there first. And you can only achieve that by having a thick layer of institutions that guarantee equality through laws, through modern institutions that favor a capitalist platform. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we do.
and Greece never had that chance. So instead of just throwing money at at Greece and saying, hey, you develop your own economy, you have to be aware of their mimetic makeup. If they're in red, that money is not going to go to develop institutions. That money is not going to go to reforms, which has been the primary concern of the EU. So that's part of resilient design. I'll give you the example of what we did in the West Bank and Palestine. When we were designing the Build Palestine initiative, okay, we directed business people not to look to attract the big manufacturers, the high-tech industry. The center of gravity in the West Bank was red, and you need an economic program that absorbs that red energy. So we advocated for things that are heavy on the labor, that exhaust the young red Arabs working at a place where they don't have the energy at the end of the day to go, do the terrorist activities. So we directed them to build a cement factory, heavy labor work that is in high demand. Those are the kind of things that you design based on the mimetic profiles of the culture. And of course, to every culture that's higher up on the spiral, you design for the center of gravity of that culture. So that's the reference of resilient design. Peace is a byproduct of that design, not a direct goal. It is a byproduct of resilient design.
Okay, I would like to bring up a question, and it's from Tom. Is our monetary system based on debt and fiat currency holding our civilizations back from allowing second-tier thinking to dominate? And I click on this button, and so it should be timestamped.
The answer to that is an absolute yes. We are based on a fiat currency. None of the global currencies are backed by gold. That has been the case since the early 70s, and the currency has since been as good as the word of the government that prints it. Well, we know. Well, in our country, it's not. It's what the Fed says. It's not what the government said. But in either case, the word of our government has really not been that good. What our government's approval rating has been at a historic low. But yes, everywhere you look, currency has become a fiat currency, and unfortunately, it has been abused. And I talk about this a lot in my work. Currency historically has been a representative of productive output, of human productive output. It has to remain tied to human productive output. There's some deviation from that is healthy. The deviation is what funds capital markets to create, future technology and innovation, and allow, government to pay its bills before it collects revenues, things of that nature. But that is only about a 15 to 20% above where the total supply of money should be. Well, that has been perverted over the last 30 years. In the States, we moved away from that. We tried what I call orange experiment. So money for 8,000 years has been a representative of the blue system. And with Reaganomics here in the States, we began experimenting with it as an agent of the orange system. So strategically using money to produce more power and money. And so it moved it away from its ties, its historic ties to productive output. Well, Europe even went a step further in the pathology, and they used it as an agent of the green system. In essence, what the euro is the EU's desperate measure to bring equality to the continent. So they used it as a tool of egalitarianism to spread the idea that we are one continent united by one currency. So these are the two pathologies that came out of money becoming a fiat currency. The answer to that is there's a variation of answers out there, but I talk about what the ideal form of currency is from a second-tier perspective, and we can talk about that a little bit more if there aren't more pressing questions.
Mm-hmm. There are some more questions. This is another one from always Tom. What are some of the most promising, encouraging trends in the current development of second-tier yellow integrative consciousness on the part of organizations?
Of organizations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it seems like the buzz in the community now is reinventing organizations with teal organizations. As Don so eloquently put it at the ITC, the colors that Spiral Dynamics picked were picked for a reason. And there are cool color systems and there are warm color systems, and yellow is the right name of, of second-tier organizations. In my work, I use two examples of emerging second-tier organizations. One that is a direct emergence of the green values of the digital economy. So the values of the digital economy seek to democratize information and resources. And I think we talked a little bit about that last time. You can't democratize everything. So out of that dysfunction comes the yellow system that says we really have to functionalize information and resources. And so at the head of that organization's value system are companies like Google. Google that do two things. They disrupt unhealthy orange industries and in part some healthy orange industries as well. But they also give you an impression of what the future looks like. The future is, it's not a legacy issue that lasts 20, 30 years. The future is disruption at the speed of light. And so those are the kind of values that a yellow organization needs to embrace. Now, the other form of yellow organizations is exemplified by Whole Foods and the conscious capitalism movement. I talk quite extensively about that in my book. The conscious capitalism movement was founded by John Mackey, who's the CEO of Whole Foods, and who uses spiral dynamics in training his entire organization. They have a good balance of having a green environment for their employees. Last time we talked, someone asked about transparency and its significance to second-tier values. Transparency is part and parcel of Whole Foods' platform. Everybody at that organization knows what everybody else makes, and what they need to do to attain a certain level, climbing up on the hierarchy. So it sort of combines the best of the first-tier values and brings them together to create a yellow organization. Whole Foods' emphasis on partnering with local stakeholders is very, very important to the model. So that is sort of like the distributed intelligence that a yellow model has. It seeks the benefit of local stakeholders instead of the primary model for the orange organization, which is the stockholder. And so those are the general categories of yellow organizations, not teal organizations.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have another question? Or
there is another question, and this is the one of Lawrence. Lawrence, shall I bring it up? And you can modify it a little bit. You have written here, there are two sayings relevant to this topic.
Okay. One, if you want peace, work for justice. And two, you gotta wanna. I posted this incendiary piece that, curiously enough, is relevant to this topic. And I guess that you have taken a peek at that video, Said.
Maybe if he saw it.
Yeah.
Anyway, there is a link here, and it will show up, I hope, then later. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You want to add something, Lawrence, first? Do you want to explain?
Well, what I'd like to do actually is to write upon Said's most recent comments, particularly the one about, well, actually two. One, that money is properly tied to the worth of production, the value produced productively. The other is the use of the gold standard. And my thought on this is that the value of gold is entirely arbitrary. It comes from an earlier time, and the use of gold now, its value has to do with the production of semiconductor equipment. It's in the plating used in producing chips. So gold now does have an intrinsic value. The question being now, if we're to tie the value of money to the value of production, what is being produced, where do we set the reference point? It's not in gold any longer, can't be, because it's arbitrary. So, Said,
Please, yeah. Thank you for bringing those fine points up, Lawrence. I tie the value of currency to human productive output. Now, it's very easy to confuse it with productive output. I'm not saying that a small a hypothetical island country with 3 CEOs and 1,000 factories providing the world 2% of its total GDP is the right objective. It is not. What I advocate for is human productive output, meaning that human input has to be to contribute a greater factor towards the calculation of total GDP. Now let me explain how I tie that to money. Your comment about gold. Gold is what I call a false blue, a false sense of security that supports a base for currency. And the exaggerated example of that. Imagine a corporation goes into some Central African country and they dig a hole and they find the biggest gold deposit like we've never seen before, and suddenly starts extracting all that oil, making that country rich. Well, that is a false sense of what pegging the economy would be. So gold is that false blue. Now the movement to what I call a second-tier form of currency is more tied to an index of human productive output, meaning that, the amount of human input that goes into producing every product accounts for a lot more of that calculation on that GDP. And that total index of ratio of human productive, the more the ratio of human productive output is in that equation, the more valued the currency of that nation is. And so you use that index to sort of peg, and its applications, of course, will be initially voluntary. But to take the index of human productive output as a measure to gauge the currency to, that will be sort of a second-tier expression of currency without having to disrupt the current uses of currency. It is just the expression of what the next blue system that represents productive output is going to be. So no more false blue, no more fiat of both orange and green, but an actual true representation of what economics and capitalism means for the human experience. And it is that gauging of human productive output to the currency that's going to give us that answer. And that, of course, includes all complementary currencies, anything, the bitcoins, once they're standardized through a rigorous institutional process, they'll be an acceptable form, but they're not the only solution. Complementary, we have little coupons here that we can go into the local Starbucks and pay with them. That is fine and acceptable. It's for a local community, but I can't take that same coupon and go 3 miles away to Home Depot and buy lumber with it. It is local and specific to my community. So whatever works for a community is a part of that new yellow system, but it all has to be gauged in a way that it produces a yellow index that gauges the value of the currency that has to be based on human productive output.
I'm feeling a bit vague on what you mean by human productive output.
Let's say total GDP calculation in the United States now includes a lot of factory output, things that are produced by machines that have a dollar sign to them. those things alone will have, let's say, they're valued today at $1 million. The index that I call for is that unless they have they employ tremendous labor, they won't be valued at $1 million. They'll be valued more at a $200,000-300,000 range for the purposes of the index. And then a company that produces also another $1 million of total productive of GDP, but 80% of it, it employs, let's say, 5 times the number of employees that the first company does. Its contribution to the total calculation of GDP would be considerably higher.
Okay,
So
I would like to interfere a little bit because I want to acknowledge our watchers who are out there. And I see there is Brian McConnell, and he also has a question. Brian, jump over to Crowdcast and post it there so we can timestamp it. Then I see Melanie is also here, and Hendrik Brittmer. John is here. He just made in time. John, if you still want to come into the green room, you have the link. Michael Lemke is here. Tom Clearwater, Monica Schmidt, and I think this is Mikhail, our Russian friend, and some other people. And there are also people on Crowdcast here, which I cannot clearly identify because I see only the pictures, but not the name here.
Some of the pictures we recognize.
Some of the pictures we can recognize. There is another question I would like to bring up, and this is from Hunter, W. Hunter Hartley, and he says,
could you comment on resilience in relation to the future of the Internet, especially in relation to the development of second-tier businesses such as Google? Well, you may have answered some of that already. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add to that, Said.
Yeah, well, resilience as it applies specifically to the Internet, the prime directive, if you will, of the Internet was the democratic distribution of information and resources. So to make that resilient is to bring it to the level where that is made functional. So I think I send a series of slides. Let me just read off from one of my presentations on what that transition would look like to make the knowledge economy more resilient. This part of my presentation is titled "Functionalizing the Bits and Bytes of the Digital Economy." So we're shifting from the 6th-level green system, okay, which calls for democratization of information, to the 7th-level system, which is second tier, that will functionalize the knowledge, not just information. So what a yellow system, what a second-tier system would do, is that instead of distributing the chaos of the information age, it functionalizes the knowledge of the information age. Notice the difference in nuance? Okay. One other aspect of it is there's the current digital economy is fascinated with big data that is very raw and unstructured. A yellow system would look at that from the values of the 7th-level system, from the big picture view that you can't harm the planet, that we need to refresh, revitalize, do all the sustainability measures in order to preserve our home planet. So we'd look at it from the big picture, structured analytics. It will be for the purpose of informing. It needs to be honed in order for it to inform the public, not just raw and unstructured information. And the digital economy needs to move from that digital virtual app-based to a digital mechanical macroeconomic based. So that's what the future looks like. It's going to be heavily automated, but it needs to the proprietary values of the knowledge economy need to move and begin to start applying at a macroeconomic scale. In a sense, really and finally, ridding us of the embedded pathologies of the industrial age, the pollution that they cause, the type of structural rigidity in their organizations. That is what the green knowledge economy is working on now. But its ultimate goal is to replace whole industries through the digital and mechanical applications of those values that emerge out of the information economy. So this sort of gives you an idea of what how that disruption or that resilient design applies to moving the green system to a second-tier perspective, to the information economy to a second-tier perspective.
Okay.
Okay, and before I bring up the question of Brian, I wanted to ask Scott. Scott, do you have some questions specifically for Said?
Yeah, I wrote one, but I don't know if it came up on the thing that you have there. But I can ask a different one because I've been thinking about it for a while.
You can ask it again, Scott, because last time I clicked on something, it shut down the whole system. So
I'll ask a different question.
Okay.
I have your book, by the way, and it's great. I encourage people to get it, the Memenomics book. Here it is. There.
Yeah.
So I'm halfway through it. Unfortunately, I'm not all the way through it. I was going to ask you a question about the gap between the super rich and everybody else. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and also a little bit about philanthropy, and that the Saudi prince Al-Walid, he gave $32 billion, and I thought maybe there was a view you had on second-tier philanthropy, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Wow. There's a paper on spiraldynamics.net about second-tier philanthropy and what the organizations that serve NGOs and really what a model for a new UN would be. That was written by Don Beck, and so I will describe it briefly, but I would defer to people reading that paper. It basically talks what I talked about already about resilient design. That you can't just say, here's a lot of money, go fix world problems. Something that has really saddened me lately is the things coming out about the American Red Cross and how they mishandled the donations, close to $500 million donations towards rebuilding Haiti. The only thing that Haiti has seen from that effort is about 30 homes and a couple of paved roads, something that, according to a Haitian contractor, could be done for under $5 million. So the amount the Red Cross claims to be a green system, which in absence of a strong regulatory blue system that checks and balances, that says we're going to hold you accountable to a higher standard. In the absence of that, corruption is going to be rampant with any NGO. The example with the UN, 80% of its budget goes to its staff. 20%, for every dollar that you give for the UN to give a bottle of water to someone, that someone only gets 20 cents. And that is the sad reality of first-tier organizations. They're just not able to spread the functionality that the second tier seeks. And I'm sorry, Scott, what was the first part of your question?
I was curious about if you would talk a little bit more about the gap between the super rich and everybody else, and maybe that has to do with orange, and go for it. Okay.
It has to do with the blind embrace of orange in this country. Suddenly, entire institutions surrender to, this is beginning with the era of Reaganomics. Institutions wholesale surrendered to the ideals of let's say fair capitalism. And so we sort of started trusting the orange system as the far superior model that knows everything. So we moved from the blue system that put all the infrastructure in place for our economy, but became burdensome towards the end. And that gave way to the orange system, and at the helm of that is Ronald Reagan ushering in all the things that orange did. Sadly, this is where our government still is today. So I call this the values that the system ushered in is an impotent blue by design. And so it basically rendered all of our institutions that regulate business obsolete. The issue with the gap between the rich and the poor is a structural problem in our tax policy. There are tax things that could be done from the second-tier system that will encourage both the wealthy to invest more and to be less burdened with the plight of this, this division between the haves and the have-nots. I posted something on my website in answer to Thomas Piketty's book Capital. He's looking to tax the poor at 75% rates, like in France, and that is the right thing to do, but without thinking of how to structure a tax policy from second tier, such as I would tax the extremely rich at 90% if their capital is not employed to put people to work. If capital is put to create jobs, I would tax it at a considerably lower rate. So I will tie the tax rate to how much have your gains contributed to what really is trickle down that never worked. The right trickle down also has a bubble up, and that we never saw the bubble up. The trickle down policies that gave the rich extremely favorable tax treatment never trickled down to the people, and that's strictly by orange design. And we're beginning to see the entropy of that. So Thomas Piketty's reaction to this with his book is a green reaction. It is a long overdue conversation about tax policy and the need for us to have what I call a smarter blue, a blue system that's designed from second tier.
Okay, we can go back to the questions we have here on Crowdcast. There are two which are very much related to it. I first would like to bring up this from Brian. Would you like to read it?
Brian McConnell is writing, says, I asked Said yesterday if he discussed his perspective involving what resilience might look like in respect to the practical design of blue institutions. He responded, good question. To be answered tomorrow, Brian. Yes, I saw that posted too. So it's tomorrow, I'm afraid.
and here we are.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Brian. But I would, there isn't a magical statement that I can say that's going to fix all this. We clearly know there's tremendous dysfunction in our government. The blue that we have in our government now is to regulate industrial age values. And we're emerging into a digital future. We're emerging into a global village with blue that is still stuck in the 1940s and 50s. What I call for in resilient design of government is really a government designed from the 7th level system, from second tier. And that applies to a systemic overhaul of what we see now. If we do it only, well, not if we do it, if it only happens At the executive branch, it's not going to work. If it only happens in the judiciary, it does not work. If it only happens at the representative level, it won't work. It has to happen systemically. And just to give you an example of what that system might look like, take a look at who Elizabeth Warren is. She is someone who understands the orange expression that has collapsed the global economies, 10 years ago. They were prevented from collapse, but they are dying a slow death. She understands every little intricate detail about how bankers operate, how they manipulate laws, how they're able to pull the wool over the voters' eyes and still think that they're doing noble things. That type of intelligence is what our new regulatory system needs. And it is, and not only does she see the dysfunction in orange, she also sees the dysfunction in our current blue. So when she has banking regulators go up on Capitol Hill and testify about all the problems that they're facing and their inability to regulate, at the end of a week of testimony like that, she turns to them and says, "So you are too incompetent to regulate." And so she's pointing at the huge dysfunction that is allowing the bankers to get away with what they're getting away with. So this is someone who has the potential to create a new yellow system. We need to populate the representative branch of at least another 50 to 100 people of the values of Elizabeth Warren. She understands that banking has overstayed its welcome, that there are other expressions of orange that we should be concerned about, that can spread the healthy values of orange that are really the basis of us moving on to a healthy green and a healthy second tier. She understands the dysfunction in the blue system and calls institutions that are incompetent or vacuous for what they are. So we need to populate, the short answer, Brian, is we need to populate our entire political systems with the likes of Elizabeth Warren. Now, don't mistake that for some statements that she's made that might sound liberal. Being a lone wolf in this, you have to have a community to belong into, and the community that she defaults to is the liberal camp. But at her core, if she finds similar thinkers like her, we could be potentially looking at a yellow political system that can build the institutions or reform the institutions or get rid of them altogether. I see the future of government, at least in this country, because of the dysfunction that has gone into it from the orange system. I look at the future of government as being algorithmic, not bureaucratic. And with that comes a lot of fear about, well, government is the biggest employer in this country. What's going to replace that? Those are areas that are, going to be subject to a lot of speculation, a lot of reflection. And so when we say that the future is disruptive, it truly is, and we have no idea what that disruption is going to look like yet.
Okay, thank you. So I think we take the other question, which seems to be more related at the moment. This is from Tom.
Oh, it's Tom again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He says, so many jobs are being automated these days. It seems like an exponential curve of accelerating trends where the new digitally empowered technologies are replacing human labor. In that light, how can any future currency be based on human resources, and how to distribute wealth so that even the unemployed can afford to purchase the products of automated factories? Just a little question there, Said.
Well,
That's a mouthful.
It sort of brings back the idea of unions from a second tier perspective, I suppose. But that is exactly why we need to have the the new index that determines the value of a currency tied to human productive output. There will be at one point so many algorithms created that you know what each and every one of us has taken for granted as a career will disappear in the next 50 years. That is a very scary prospect. The idea that you know, we can all sit around twiddling our thumbs is not a I mean, that's idle toil. That is, although it allows for a lot of philosophical discussion, people need to be engaged in productive pursuits. And so I would say if we place less emphasis on the value of automation and more emphasis on the human input, the system will find balance on its own.
That would be a great outcome. I don't know. I wrote a question too before we started, and before the show ends, I want to get it in.
Yes, there's some more questions.
Oh, my
Anybody
goodness.
has a right to ask a question, Mark. It's you.
But not everybody has to be answered. Okay.
I think if you have enough time, Said, we can answer all the questions. So
Sure. Yeah.
will you ask your
She
question?
just said no. I have to wait.
No, okay, you can. I allow you.
Okay. Well, what really was the first thing I noticed about your work was that you described that the economic systems are not in the forefront. They are in the rear guard, that other institutions in society precede them into whatever the future is unfolding into. And so I'm thinking of some observers who have noted that business is often the first to adapt, and then other institutions in society can follow, and academia is a kind of following further back, and last of all is government to make the change. And so I'm wondering, where does the economic system fall into that hierarchy of avant-garde or rear-guard progress?
Well, the economic system today is part and parcel of the orange system. Anywhere you look at it, it is a part of that fifth level strategic thinking, manipulate the resources of the world till hell freezes over, till we can't do it anymore. And unfortunately, Mark, we're coming to that realization out of necessity, not out of voluntary evolution. It's not coming out of consciousness that we choose to evolve because we read the warning signs. We are forced to evolve our practices because now the danger is paramount. We see it everywhere, and that is what's causing the orange system to become more inclusive of green values, to become more inclusive of we need to survive on this only home that we have. Some of the issues that you bring up, the government of the future has to anticipate what business is going to do. It has to stay ahead of the game. For the last 50, 60 years or so, government has been reactive to business. They don't regulate anything till it causes a problem. And you're beginning to see, even in that yellow model for actual integral ecosystems is beginning to emerge in large cities. And the best example of that is places like New York City and other international cities. But you take the example of Uber in New York City. Uber is rendering the entire taxi industry obsolete. In New York, the mayor stepped forward and says, we will regulate the Uber or any app-based transportation system and tax it and try to understand it. This is the kind of agility that a new yellow regulator has to have. It's still reactive, but it really needs to understand the technology and where the leading edge of technology is. It has to be the facilitator of second-tier values, not a system that catches up in reaction to what Orange does. And that's the point that I make with leaders like Elizabeth Warren, who really understand everything that Orange does and say, you're not going to pull wool over my eyes. I know exactly what you're doing. You're going to need to be regulated, not to punish you, but to keep you on a healthy track that says, we live in a taxing environment. You can't manipulate laws, the environment, worker health, things of that nature. You can't manipulate them to your advantage anymore. We need to have government be ahead of the game, and that's what a yellow system would do.
Okay,
thank you. That's a good answer. I
want to
that.
bring up another question. This is from Sai, and as I think he is the founder of the Crowdcast. He has created this Crowdcast app, and I find it really, it's the first time we use it, I find it great.
Okay.
So can you read what he is?
He's writing, have you read Charles Eisenstein's Sacred Economics? And what do you think about moving into a gifting economy in the far future?
And he so far has gifted this wonderful platform to us.
Yes, he has.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sai, for this wonderful. This is the second time in a week I get asked about. Is it? What's the first name?
Charles Eisenstein. Yes.
Yeah, this is the second time in a week I get asked about him, and now I have to go read his writings. But I would say this: the gifting economy is a purple answer. Gifting still happens. Az and I were in Lebanon for Christmas. Guess what? Gifting happens. It's because of the complexity of Orange in the West that we had forgotten about the importance of that free act of gifting. I think a lot of the motivation in the West, especially coming out of the information economy, is that the pervasive use of the technology based on gifting will vet the beta phase, if you will, of the technology, hoping that it will get a big valuation somewhere down the line. Let's not mistake that for a yellow system. That is a very advanced form of Orange thinking that's proprietary to the digital economy. Okay? So I hope the motivation is green, like the originators of the internet intended it to be. But at the end, everybody seems to follow the model of doing R&D at 10 times the speed of traditional Orange, and hope that something would stick by doing iterations and beta testing till something sticks, and you can monetize it for $1 billion per app. I hope that gifting as a part of a turquoise community, meaning coming back to the tribe, but from a global perspective, is the value that manifests. I would need to read Charles Einstein's work before I can comment intelligently on that. But on the surface, it seems like it's just another manifestation of the purple that the West has really lost touch with.
Yes.
Okay, and I wanted to add that who doesn't know about these colors, it would be a great thing if they read your book, because these colors represent the levels of development, and if you have never heard about them, you probably doesn't make much sense. So I think this is, we won't explain it here, we have explained it in other places, and you can find in our Wisdom Factory YouTube channel. You can.
There's also a chart on memeonomics.com. Click on the tab that says "What is memeonomics?" There's a chart that explains the colors as a culture-wide value system, and then to the right of it is an explanation column on how it manifests, how it is manifested historically, and what its contemporary manifestation is in economics. So, yeah, there are a lot of resources online, spiraldynamics.net, memeonomics.com. You can get all that information. And by the way, there's a spiral dynamics training happening in the days are just finalized. Spiral dynamics training might be one of the very last ones done by Dr. Beck in October, end of October, at the Adiza's Graduate School in Santa Barbara. So you know, nothing like getting it from the original guru himself. So I encourage everybody to sign up for that. I haven't posted it yet, but I will in the next few days. For those of you on Beck Graves, you can check there, or just check memeonomics.com or spiraldynamics.net. I had to throw that in just in passing information.
We had other two questions which have disappeared. There was one from Melanie Hall about ISIS and the dangerousness that they have created their own monetary system, and there was one from John Freeman, which I don't actually remember. Where did they go? Can you post it again?
Oh, my goodness. They're gone.
And Tom wants to know again, what's the book title you said before?
Your book, Said.
Memeonomics, M-E-M-E-nomics, Next Generation Economic System. Scott is holding it up now. It is,
there we go.
You can see my screen. It is the next big think. That is the clever tagline that my publicist came up with.
That's great.
Memeonomics.com, and that's where it is.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah, so someone had a question on ISIS?
Yes, about the one that they have created their own money.
Whatever currency they're creating, whatever. Yeah, well, you know, ISIS held up the two local branches of the Iraqi central bank and stole their gold, and have taken over oil refineries and have been able to get their oil to Turkey illegally for sale. That's how they've been able to finance their terrorist activities. But ISIS is just a manifestation of red that is reacting to another red. Let's just not forget that it was really the U.S. that created ISIS, not directly, but in a sense by dissolving the Iraqi army, automatically gave rise to ISIS, which is primarily made up of past Saddam generals who figured out exactly how to attract the youth throughout the world seeking purpose to wage jihad. Okay, that's the movement. They're trying to implement it into a new Khalifa, which is a completely asinine and unworkable scenario. So I don't foresee ISIS lasting beyond another year or so. People who fall under their rule are quickly realizing that there is no way in hell to return back to values of 500, 600 years. It is just impossible to maintain the presence of such evil force. Even in the Middle East, it's just impossible to maintain it. So it will get worse before it gets better, but I think it will get better. Okay. And any possibility of any currency they create, it will be very short-lived.
Good. Thank you. The question of John Freeman didn't appear, but another one by Said did appear.
What are techniques or practices you would encourage people to have in order to go up the spiral in spiral dynamics? Oh, another just small question, yeah.
One is Lawrence Gold, the gold key release.
Yes, indeed.
That's a good question, John. I think you'll
No,
be
it's Sai. It is Sai asking it, not John.
Oh.
John's question has disappeared, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I would encourage whoever's listening to the show to really research spiral dynamics and read up on it. It is a developmental model based in academic research, and research Claire Graves, research Don Beck, see all the different applications that the theory has been taken to. I would say find a spiral dynamics training workshop. If you're in Europe, there are many outlets in Europe that train spiral dynamics. Some of it is part of the integral theory work. Most of integral and most of Ken Wilber's theory of everything is based on the Graves model. Unfortunately, Ken and Don went their separate ways after that collaboration, but as a part of it, a lot came out that brought the overall developmental whole systems models under one umbrella. And so whether it's integral or spiral dynamics, there are a lot of communities all throughout the world. You just have to find them and read the books on it.
I was really
Okay.
happy to see that at the ITC meeting in San Francisco, the Integral Theory Conference, your wife, of course, Elsa, was very well received, and from all I hear, though you had a smaller presentation yourself, that you got lots of rave reviews too, personally. And one of them was from Ben Siganti, who you probably met there, and he's very
Yes.
big in European integral, and he just had wonderful, wonderful things to say about his contact with you. So it's really nice to see that perhaps there's a coming together of this old schism, and I'm really happy to see that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and that was wonderful for Bence to acknowledge that that we have more in common than we have of things that are separating us. So I look forward to a collaborative future with our colleagues in the integral community. And if the objective is to solve world problems, I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
I'm really happy because integral means integral.
It means integral, yeah.
And we really should become to integrate our forces and collaborate instead of everybody trying to do their own thing. So we are coming to an end now, and I would give to our guests here in the film strip the possibility
My only comment, Mark and Heidi, my only comment on the whole ITC is enough work on your shadow, for God's sake. Go out and solve real problems.
I think it must be both, you know.
But your point is clear. Yes.
Yeah. I would like to
going out during the day, you know, where your shadow is not so obvious. Or is it the other way around? Anyway, this was wonderful. I'm so glad to have been a part of this today.
Yeah, that's great. And can we just have some final words from
our guests? Takeaway here.
Okay.
And all the watchers outside, please post your takeaways. If it is on Google Plus or here in Crowdcast, please.
Mm-hmm. So maybe who should go first? I think probably Lawrence had a question not quite answered. I don't know if he's got over that yet, but let's see if he has a takeaway.
Well, I thought I'd aggressively go after a certain point here. We've been looking at the developmental spiral, and I'd like to aim a different filter on it and on the spiral dynamics itself by reminding us of the four-quadrant model that Ken Wilber formalized, and relate that to the valuation and distribution of wealth. So it seems to me that in accounting for the value of wealth, we must account for the personal internal experience of value, that's upper left.
Mhm.
The just distribution of wealth, lower left. The life support side on the individual side in the upper right, and the ecological consequences at the lower left. And I'm suggesting that all four must be taken into account in calculating the value of wealth, because there is a detriment or deduction for adverse ecological consequences, and for insults to the sense of justice, which, by the way, translates into loss of trust, which is largely what's behind the failure of economies. When people don't trust each other, they don't do business. I think I just sufficiently outlined that. I'm suggesting that we incorporate all four quadrants, and not just a quantitative evaluation of how to distribute wealth, but also qualitative. And how, again, do we account for how wealth acquires its value?
I think
That's mine.
I think you misspoke in one point, Lawrence. You were talking about the lower right quadrant, and you called it the lower left, so perhaps people got confused on that.
Dang, I meant to say lower right, ecological, lower
Yeah.
left, justice.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
No, I agree with your perspective wholeheartedly, Lawrence. The pathology that has already developed is that wealth has fallen into the hands of a closed system orange. And so the challenge becomes is how do you pry that system open and make it evolve? And for the coming values, it's looking a lot more like you have to disrupt it out of that. And what that looks like in prying the wealth out of the hands of people who really still believe that money is tied to gold, that it's that kind of, they have completely missed the boat on fiat currency, and they still think that they still wield a lot of power. Well, the movement out of the gold standard has liberated money from its historic ways of being conservative, and it has opened up the conversation on what a yellow currency would look like. So I believe that that still is a challenge for us here in the States, is how do you you really can't force the top 1% into adopting conscious values. And so this is where I believe in Buckminster Fuller's view on if you cannot, if you want to disrupt the system, create a new system that makes the old one obsolete. There's a lot of new wealth that is competing for positions to replace that wealth, and hopefully those emerging billionaires out of the new economy are conscious enough to begin to address the entire system and be aware of the of all four quadrants, instead of I've gotten my share, I'm stuck in orange, and that's and it is just a very narrow perspective, and sadly I'm afraid that it will remain that till it's disrupted by new forces that are emerging. One of them is definitely a smart tax policy that will tax the gains of those people. You can keep all your money, but any new gains made out of non-productive employment of your money will go into a tax that will address the issues that you brought up, Lawrence, that will rejuvenate our ecology, that will rejuvenate the entire issue that has to deal with a sustainable economy that hasn't been addressed by Old Orange.
Okay, thank you very much. We are far over the hour, and I thank you everybody who is still there in the audience and is still listening. So we come to Scott for his last observation.
Yes, I know we're overdue, but I was just thinking about a takeaway for me today is that And you know, it sounds kind of like a Robin Hood, where you have a green Robin Hood, and then maybe you want to get to a yellow Robin Hood, where you have a different kind of way of understanding what's healthy for the other systems that come before second tier. And I think one of the things that's interesting about spiral dynamics is that it's once you get it, you kind of understand it. And so for people out there that don't understand color systems, it's really kind of a good idea, I think, to get your head situated around that. And the more that people understand, the better off we all are. So that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And I see that is Jochen Becker here on the G+, and he asked some questions which we couldn't bring up on the other platform. He wants to know what are new scales beyond money, and we have to go ahead a new integral entrepreneurship. Yeah, and then he wants to know if you know the work from Christian Felber and economy of common good.
Okay.
And if you know it, what do you think about it? So this should be the very last question, okay?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm not, I need to add that to my reading list, I suppose. I've been just busy with other stuff. But the title sounds inspiring. It seems like a lot of conscious thinkers are looking to define the next system, and it's all a good thing. We've exhausted the values of the current system, and we're in that paradigm shift where we're looking for the next, and any contribution is helping define that new system.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh, and I hope the transition can be a little smooth some of the time anyway.
Hopefully.
That would be nice. Okay.
So thank you very, very, very much, Said, for your wisdom you shared with us today.
Yeah.
And our friends Lawrence and Scott to help us out here, and all the big audience here who has asked the question, and the others who haven't asked the questions. You are so welcome, and I hope you had something out of it. And please write your comments on it and tell us what was the aha moment out of this conversation. Yeah. And we surely will have you back, Said, in the next few months and continue the conversation.
Well, I'm looking for that, So I'm looking forward to that. So I think really this has been a productive conversation, whether it's this session or the one from 2 weeks ago. I prefer engagement and really dealing with issues that are coming up, and this has been really the best platform to do that. So I really want to thank you, Mark and Heidi, for doing this. This has been wonderful.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you.
You know, it comes out of my past, which I was very much in the mind and university studying and papers and stuff. And I was never happy about that. And, and now with Google Plus and all these wonderful things, I found out it's so much easier, and people and myself can learn so much better out of conversation and not just reading, or listen 2 hours to somebody talking and you sleep, So this was the motivation why we created this. And thank you that you agreed and came to be with us. So we see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
Thanks,
now.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.